Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Dark Matters radio show with the Sorceress Cagliastro, blood sorceress, pioneer, and necromancer in the hands of nine, for discussion on all topics related to blood sorcery, necromancy, the science of sorcery, and related work of manipulation of energy. Each week, the Sorceress Cagliastro and Chris Rogostrowski will explore topics designed to reveal what cannot be seen. Tonight's topic is magnetics. We'll be talking electromagnetic energy and directional sorcery. And we also have a special guest joining us, Victor Furman. Victor is an interfaith minister, spiritual channel, author, and paranormal investigator who is currently on 2 investigation teams in New York. Join us in the Dark Matters chat room for discussion and questions. And now, here is the Sorceress Cagliastro and Chris Rogostrowski.
Thank you, Mary. Good evening. Hi, Chris. Are you on? I think Chris has to dial back in. So why don't you send him a message? Speaking of energy, well, energy, magnetism, this sort of thing. I had an idea that we should talk about this tonight or put it out there tonight, because when I wrote the second Blood Sorcery Bible, I really spent a lot of time making sure I was talking about the practitioner. There are endless amounts of books and studies and whatnot about the practice, about what to do when you stand on the floor and what to say and who to say it to if that is your particular way of being, of what to use, materials, all manner of things. But in the decades of studying blood sorcery and finding new directions in which to take this work, and by new I probably mean old and basic, because the desire I have for the work is that anyone who wants to do it can do it. What I discovered was that there was no real discussion about holding the energy in your hand and what it means to access the energy that's there. So I tend to get a little teachy about this kind of thing. So if that happens, then it does, and there's not much I can do about it. I feel very strongly about this issue. My desire is tonight is to just offer a few comments, and I just taught a class on this, which will be a little book once it's transcribed, but to just sort of reach into the bag of electricity, magnets, electromagnetism, what all that means on the very physical plane, and dealing with those kinds of opportunities, because they really are opportunities, and in terms of sorcery, what is available and how we can not only grasp that energy and use that energy, but in a sense get out of the way of it so that we can utilize it on a daily basis all the time. Energy and electromagnetism are here all the time. The planet is a magnet. If you are alive, and that's, I think tonight we will be discussing this mostly, and not maybe exclusively, but mostly, as it pertains to how to use the energy in sorcery. But Victor's with us tonight, and he has amazing experience in the usage of energy and how he's seen it come across his table, if you will, across his plate. But what I'd like to do is help people understand where it is, how to grasp it, and what to do with it when you have it. So is Chris on yet, Mary?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
can you hear
hi.
me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks, Chris. You want to add your intro to the subject matter?
Well, from my point of view, I've looked at both ends. I mean, I've looked at the scientific end of it, and I've looked at applying it to spirituality, if you will. And what I found is energy no matter what you do. It's just a matter of focusing it where you want it to go. I talked with Mary the other night, and we were saying about, like quantum physics talks about, if you get enough people in the room and you all concentrate on the chair and want it to turn into a table, you can rearrange the molecules to make it turn into a table. Science recognizes this, and that's no different than sorcery. You're still doing the same thing. I mean, you're not going through all the you're not going through all the hoopla and all the carrying on and everybody in fancy robes and all kinds of shit hanging around. But if science recognizes that, how can nobody believe that? How can you not do it if you don't apply yourself?
Well, Chris, I just want to say that a very strong portion of understanding the science of sorcery is getting out of your own way. The less tools between you and that which is already in your hands, the more successful your work will be. At some point tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about electromagnetism and what that is, and electricity and magnets, and magnets and electricity, and how they feed into each other in this earth that we stand on. And one of the things that I'm currently investigating is the electromagnetic energy field of the human heart and this sort of thing, things that I talked about in class the other night and things that I intend to explore more in the space. But before we get into that, I want to say that my purpose here tonight is to help people who want to be able to use this energy, get out of the way of it, and understand that they're already standing in it. Teaching sorcery is a very interesting thing. I spend hours and hours preparing for classes, and I write very few notes during that preparation. I just think about the work that I want to talk about and think about who's in the class and what level they're at. It's my understanding of their ability to stack information onto the information they have. And that in and of itself is energy. So us coming together and talking about this tonight is energy. There's a second layer here. When the four of us talk about energy tonight, and people in the chat room who might want to add to that, what we're doing is we're creating a ritual, in a sense, about talking about the energy. And that, in and of itself, is the utilization of energy. So I say all of this and pile all this on at the front end of this thing tonight so that the listener can understand that the point of this experience is to help people know what they already have and how to use it. Victor, do you have anything you want to open the show with tonight and talk about?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for asking me to join you tonight. This is really a fascinating subject for me and something that I've studied most of my life. And I just want to say that I had gotten a copy of Blood Sorcery Bible Volume 2 delivered by Amazon on Friday, read about two-thirds of it over the weekend, and Sorceress, it's amazing. It's an acknowledgement and a sort of yes answer to me of many of the things that I've experienced through my practice. And I must say that once we all started talking together tonight, as it is when you talk about being in the static point, my hands immediately started tingling, and for me that's a sign of energy flowing. So right away, it's there.
Thank you, Victor. The static practice is a very important thing, and we talk about it quite a bit in classes. And I'm grateful to you for coming on because your life experience is broad and wonderful, and I know that energy is a big part of your work. How do you define energy in your work? Is there a way, if someone knew nothing about this work and they wanted to say to you, oh, well, what is this energy thing? What are you doing? What happens? How would you talk about that?
In my experience, first of all, from a scientific background, because I did study science when I was in school, we know that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but changes from form to form. And so we know about the electromagnetic spectrum that you're going to be talking about a little bit later. We know about light energy, which is part of that. We know about electricity, which is part of that. We know about atomic energy, which is all part of that, different levels of vibration and frequency. But in terms of the spiritual practice for me, it's an acknowledgement of the essence of who we are. It's the spirit, the basis. If you take away, if you take away the incarnation, if you take away the body, the carbon, what's left behind, and what's left behind is a form of energy, and that's my experience.
Well, I absolutely agree with you, and you have a spiritual practice where I understand that you have some connection to other entities, other divinities, and I have enormous respect for you, Victor. I'm very excited about you bringing that to the show tonight because the language of the thing is very important as well. People use words like spirituality, and it can be a little vague. It can feel a little bit disconnected. My extreme lean on the science of the thing is not something that I made a choice about. It's something that is real for me. And when I wrote the Blood Sorcery Bible 2, I had to stop writing it because I could have written about the science of it and indefinitely and the static practice and how that affects the practitioner. But what I enjoyed most about that process was I got to talk about a little bit of science from the point of view of somebody who is not a scientist at all. I am a sorceress. I am not educated in the way that Victor has expressed he is, and that's why I'm grateful to have him on tonight. What I have is a little thing called the multiple decades of trying it and changing it and bending it and working with it, and a serious desire to retain as much data as possible. So when I talk about rituals, and we'll do a little bit of that tonight, we'll maybe throw a question here and see how we would all handle it. When I talk about rituals and I talk about process, what I'm offering is stuff that has been tried, retried, triple tried, quadruple tried, tested, and then talked about. I don't talk about work that's under development unless I'm being very specific that this is work under development. When we go to the Blood Project, we'll be using energy in a very specific way. It'll be energy directed at data that already exists and see if we cannot create a new level, a new data. So tonight's show is really about, I guess, many perspectives on exactly the same thing, which is how to put it in your hands and how to use it. And at some point, maybe we'll talk about the disincarnate and how they fit into this. Mary, thoughts?
Tonight, because I think, as is talked in the book, in Blood Sorcery Bible 2, the fact that we live on Earth, and Earth is a giant magnet, and then we have the blood, which is a giant, magnets are in us, really, in our blood, and how we can work with that and manipulate it and, kind of call out to other people with our own blood or our situations, I think is going to be a really interesting conversation tonight. And building on that with the directional sorcery, which I know we're going to talk about, so how do we use that? And what's really already at our fingertips, literally, I think is going to be a great discussion.
Let me just lay out a little bit of a blueprint on that. And just quickly, because many people have heard me say it a lot of times, the Earth is a giant magnet. We're standing on a giant magnet. It has a core of molten iron that has waves, very much like the ocean. Floats in an alloy. They work against each other a little bit, and this is very, very, very layman's terms. Perhaps Victor could add things to that if he feels that he wants to do so. And what happens is the actual action of that creates a magnetic field, and in a magnetic field, things such as iron are attracted by that energy, and we happen to have some of that in our bodies. In everybody, in the average human being, adult human being, there's probably enough iron to make a 2 to 3 inch nail, thin nail. And that some of that iron is active, some of it is not. But the physical form of the human being is, the other night I was talking about this in class, is in some ways like a Tesla coil. We have this spinal cord, and it's filled with all manner of things that are conductive. And we are, in a sense, just part of the magnetic equation by the fact that we're standing on the Earth. And in that necessity of energy that goes through us, instead of thinking about it perhaps as something we have to reach out and grab, there is already a necessity in our human experience to be fed by that energy and to be kept here in this thing called gravity. We are already in the proper alignment to sorcery. Any thoughts on that, Victor?
Well, it's interesting. Just a little bit of background on me, and I am nowhere near. I'm not a scientist, nor do I claim to be a scientist. I've studied science. I've studied spirituality. I've sort of found a merge between the two. But if you look at the synchronicity in my life in terms of this work overall, my grandfather was a coppersmith. He was someone who worked with copper. He would melt copper and mold it into things. I have absolutely no background in metallurgy, but I wound up in a business in my day job. My day life is the welding supply industry, in which I'm immersed in metals, especially irons and various alloys. And so the synchronicity of this whole thing about working with metals, working with iron, is part and parcel of my DNA, both in the practical sense and also in the spiritual sense. So having that background, this whole concept, when I was a kid, I was fascinated by magnets and electromagnetism and played with them from the time that I can remember, maybe 3 or 4 years old. I remember winding my first electromagnet and hooking it up to a 1.5-volt battery and reversing polarity and just experimenting, not as a scientist, but just as someone who was fascinated by it and was literally drawn to it, for reasons that until perhaps maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years ago I didn't understand. So this is for me, it's an unfolding path and an unfolding knowledge. And the more that I meet wonderful teachers and people with great experience like yourself, sorcerers, it just enhances it and builds and makes me more and more excited about it.
Well, Victor, thank you for that. The point that you've made that it's in our DNA, I think that many of us are looking at that now and thinking, where does this path come from for me? One of the things we're kicking around ideas, and I thought at some point I want to do a show on our paths and how we got here, and how we wound up, and I don't even know if wound up is the right word, but how we wound up in this idea that we have control of the energy. Chris does a lot of work with energy and with taking in other people's energy and handling that. Chris, do you want to talk about your experience in that area of this thing? Because we have a lot to talk about. We could use 10 hours on this subject tonight. Chris?
Yeah. Now, basically what I've done at times, and this goes back, let me give everybody a little bit of background. Back in the Catholic Church years, centuries, millennia ago, if you got excommunicated, you couldn't get last rites, which was a big deal at one time. That means you couldn't get absolved of your last sins, and everybody, wanted to get absolved. If you couldn't, you'd come back from the dead, and you become a vampire or a zombie or, something that was nasty. So it was a big thing that you had to have this done. So they had people, it was usually people that were priests that were excommunicated, and what they did was, it was called sin eating. It was a big thing in Ireland, big thing in Italy, places, where the Catholic Church had a big influence. And it did carry over, especially in Appalachia, into the United States once it became settled. And what it basically is when somebody dies, you yourself take on the negative, quote-unquote, energy in themselves from the dead people, and you dispose of it. At the time, it made you pretty much of an outcast because you were dirty, you were nasty, you were, like I said before, it's like the garbage man. It's like everybody's glad to see you when you come to take the trash, but as soon as you're done, they want to get you the hell out of their sight as quick as possible. So this intrigued me. Like I said, I've got a background in the Catholic Church, and it's like, okay, I can see this. If you break it down and you get out of the religious part of it, you find out that sin, karma, everything that everybody puts in your head and tells you you've done something bad, causes negative energy in people. It causes a blockage. It causes things that it doesn't flow properly. You get it. I try to explain to people. Did you ever see Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol?
Yes.
When Marley comes back and he's all loaded with chains and all this shit. That is the way I look at this energy that people die with. They die with this guilt. And it weighs like chains. So what I do is if they ask me to do it, what I do is I will come and I will symbolically take that off of them.
Now, not symbolically, because I know you are a strong man, and you take energy in and you do stuff with it. So let's be really clear about your skill set here. It's not so symbolically, so tell us how this works.
What I do is I go through a ritual because people want to see ritual. They want to see bells and whistles and a dog and pony show. So, it makes them think that something.
It gives them comfort. It does align the room, if you will. Sometimes people need a little ritual to understand that this is a moment that's more special than 10 minutes ago.
Right. If Kiss came out on stage in T-shirt and blue jeans and just played music, it wouldn't be as exciting as the pyrotechnics and everything else that goes on. So it's a little bit of showmanship involved. And what I do is I talk to the person that's died. Because I found that in a lot of cases they do stick around.
Mm-hmm.
And I take that, I talk to them, and it's like, hey, look, this is what, I understand your problem. What's going on? Talk to me. Let me know how you feel. And it's almost like I take a confession from the dead, and I take that away from me, and I give them absolution.
At the energy level.
Afterward, right, at an energy level.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, I go out and I try, you get rid of it. You can't hold on to it. What I've found is you can change that energy. You can, depersonalize it. You can turn it into just energy, back, like all energy can be changed. It just can't be destroyed. So I've used it to, say I've bought a new knife, or I've bought something new that I want to use for some kind of ritual or spell, potion, whatever the hell you want to call it, and I want to charge something with it. I've used that energy to do it. It's like you keep it as a battery until you can use it again.
Can I jump in and talk about this term battery that you just mentioned? First of all, I think the work that you do in service of the disincarnate is beyond admirable, powerful, and amazing. And one of the reasons that I'm grateful that you jumped into this radio project with me, because Chris brings to this project, to this process, a very hands-on baseline, by which I mean he has dealt with people of all types, of all lifestyles, and done this service for them. And it's really a tremendous thing, because his energy that he carries is somewhat, embedded in all those experiences. It's very dense and strong and powerful, and sometimes I think a lot for you to carry, Chris. And we just had a very barely there conversation the other day. We were talking about energy. But I thought we would just continue that in maybe a less personal way, but in that way here. Because when we take energy like that, your point's so well taken, it cannot be destroyed, but it must be refurbished. It must be, I don't even know if cleansed is the word, but it must become neutral again. Often when I deal with not just the stuff that people want to hear about, not just the exorcisms, not just that sort of thing, but when I have a client who's just got a problem, sometimes what I do is I take the energy of that problem off of them. And I give them moments, and we do this ritual, if you will, and I involve blood sorcery in this cutting involved, where I want to say the word allow, but that's not really comfortable because that's sort of an ego-driven word. I would say more facilitate their moments of feeling a life without that problem. Chris, you're doing that for the disincarnate, and that's amazing. So when you take that away from them for a minute, and you grab this energy and you say, okay, I'm going to take this on, and have a moment without this on your shoulders, what does it feel like, so that you can realign their energy to be okay without this additional pressure. Then you walk away with some of that energy with you. I have, over all of this decades of work, certainly learned not to absorb that and not to take it in. But there is definitely a transference from them to us. Victor, you do some of this as well, yes?
Yes, I do. And what I normally do when I've finished the work with the disincarnate is to basically recycle the energy. I send it back to the earth and recycle it, and I feel that way I'm not carrying it beyond that point with me. So I encourage the disincarnate to release, and then I take the energy and I basically transmute it or ground it or recycle it.
So you're actually working with the physicality of the earth in your work?
Absolutely. I feel myself definitely connected to the earth.
That is really the guaranteed one. And when I said earlier in the beginning of the show that what I wanted to do was point out to people how to get out of the way, that is a very important methodology of getting out of the way. You know, the problem with people who try to do this work and get all jammed up in it and feel great amounts of discomfort, and discomfort just meaning that there is no comfort, or the comfort is twisted up in something else, and there's really not a moment of feeling safe in it, is that they feel that they must be some kind of hero and carry the work around. You know, I've said probably 100 times, whether in classes or on the radio or whatnot, that, for example, while doing an exorcism or something like this, one might find my methodology boring, and one might say that there's no bells and whistles, but at the end of the experience, the person is not carrying the demon or the disincarnate anymore. And that is because the more years I do this, the better I become at these simple movements of energy and negotiation. So what I want to say tonight is that right here you're standing on this amazing magnet, and what it wants you to do is recycle the energy. It wants you to do that. And by wants, I mean truly at the scientific level, truly at the understanding of physics, that this earth wants everything that comes out of it to go back into it in terms of the energy in some way. There are many theoretical physicists trying to prove all sorts of manner of this and that, looking for that particle and this particle. But the fact is that at the true baseline level of the energy worker per se, and that can be a sorcerer, that can be all manner of things, that we are standing on this enormous magnet, and that we are built to be conductors of energy. And just give me a moment to talk about what that means. And, you know, I was talking the other night in class about what it means to conduct energy. And essentially we're standing on this planet, and we are beings that have all the types of conductive tissue necessary to take the energy from the earth, utilize it, let it go, and let it go back in. Now, I'm not talking about earth magic at the esoteric level. I have no interest in that whatsoever. That's not my expertise. That's not my interest. So that's not where I'm going with this. But we are essentially walking, breathing Tesla coils. We're standing on this giant magnet. It's got all sorts of layers of electromagnetic field that changes based on how close you are to things, how far you are to things. And we have this spinal column that is really has the iron in it from the blood. It's wet, it's conductive, it's encased in a brilliant conductive box, which is our bone structure. And then energy comes up through us, and it involves itself in the heart, and I'm going to talk about the measurable electromagnetic field of the heart in a little while. And there it is. The energy is at the tips of your fingers. And there's, you know, anyone who knows me and has listened to me teach and all this sort of thing knows that I have a fascination with this, with the icon, if you will, of the sorcerer with electricity coming out of their hand. And that is really what we all want. Nobody does this unless they really want that. We want to be able to shoot electricity out of our hands, maybe not at the visual level, but to move things, to touch things, to change things, to heal, to have, to get rid of, whatever it is that we want to do, to communicate with the disincarnate, to take necromancy all the way to corporal if that's what we're looking for. But we want to be able to control energy, or we wouldn't do this. We would choose a path that leaves our future in the hands of something else. So in this sense, understand that you are really part of the electromagnetic equation, whether you plan to be or not. So as sorcerers, and I always want people to come and study with me if they want to, only if they want to. We talk about how to just be that. And the static practice has a lot to do with just being that, just being in the moment, just standing on it, and allowing that energy to be part of us. I know I've gone a little long on that, but that's what I do. So, Mary, any comments in the chat room that you want to bring forward?
Yeah, well, it's funny because there's a discussion going on. Morgan and I and some other folks are kicking around about energy, and Morgan had a really great question, so I want to make sure I get it right. He said, "I'd
Morgan
like
always
to ask."
Has great questions.
He does. I said that to him. I said, "Always a great question." He said, "I'd like to ask opinions from all of you whether it is possible to be in a state where energy is constantly flowing through you, and is this an advisable or desirable state, or should we always have a point where we turn it off?"
I'll go last. Chris, what do you think?
Well, I look at it like you are in a constant state of that. As long as you're having contact with You can't isolate yourself from the energy that's around here. I mean, you are constantly in an energy field. No matter where you go, if you weren't, you'd fly off the face of the earth. There's constantly energy here. So it's kind of hard to say that, no, you should turn it off. It's almost impossible to do that because you have gravity that runs through you. You have electrical forces from the earth, even no matter how minor they are. You have electrical forces that run through you. You have your own body's forces that run through you constantly. So you are in a constant state of flow, for lack of a better term, that there's always some kind of energy going through you at any point in time, that you can't shut yourself off 100%.
I see. Okay. I agree with you. Mary, what do you think about Morgan's question?
Well, I also, Morgan and I kind of went back and forth and talked about energy, people who are trying to channel energy. So I'm trained in Reiki, so I likened it to Reiki, where if there's different levels of Reiki. So if someone's, made a master before they get through the other levels and they're not ready to, move with that energy, it can actually, break the vessel. So we talked a little bit about, we are in a constant state, Chris. I totally agree with you. There's energy always flowing because, we're alive. So there's energy moving through us. But then some people just kind of get in a state where they short circuit. They try to channel too much energy. They start working with things that their vessel, who they are, really isn't prepared for. And I'm curious to know what you guys think. Morgan and I were kicking around people who are misdiagnosed with things, who aren't, don't know how to handle all this energy flowing through them all of a sudden. It could be someone that's working with another entity that they're just not ready to work with, and here's this extra energy. So I think, the fact that if we're at a normal state and there's energy flowing through us, it's always going. But then what if it goes off the rails, And I think that's kind of an interesting point to talk about, too. So I'm just bringing that up now.
Okay. Victor, what are your thoughts on this energy question?
Well, I agree, first of all, with everything that Chris and Mary have shared, and I'll take it to one other thing. Here's what my point of view is that the energy is constantly flowing through us. I think the question really is, when we have intended or directed energy, is that something that we turn on and off? And I believe the answer is yes. So the energy that flows through us constantly is always there. The energy of our life, the energy of our connection to everything around us is always there. The question is when we want to use the energy for purpose, that can be turned on and off. And I think very well stated in what you described and what I'm learning from you as the static practice. Mary, my foundational background in energy work was also Reiki back in the late 80s. And what I found was that you were taught a series of rituals, as you know, in preparation to apply or use or intend the purpose of the energy. And that the concept of mastery, I think the word master is often misused because anyone can be declared a master by someone else. But true mastery is the understanding that you can get into that static practice and be in that point of potential without doing anything more than intending that you're at that point. So none of the ritual is necessary, none of the preparation is necessary. When you truly master the energy, you're there, you're ready to go at a given moment.
I agree with you, Victor. I think that this issue of mastery is very important, and I think that mastery means saying no. And maybe I come to this from a point of view of the fact that much of my life is taken up with the disincarnate talking to me. I agree with what everybody's saying. You cannot turn off the energy because we are the energy. We're standing in it, so therefore we're part of it. When we stand on the earth, whether we're standing on grass with bare feet or up on a chair or on the 30th floor of something, as I was discussing the other night in class, we're still on the earth because the energy is flowing constantly. And there it is, and it's a matter of physics, and you can't get away from it. And it doesn't stop when somebody enters the experience of becoming disincarnate. But what happens is that the energy around us, especially, I feel, in the modern world, is so intense and so everywhere, and so present, and coming from sources where it has been funneled. When you put your phone to your ear, when you sit in front of your computer, when you go to a film and you're sitting in front of a giant screen. We're in this constant presence of funneled energy in a way that our ancestors were not. There's no value judgment here, good, bad, or otherwise, but the experience of navigating is different. I look at information, and that's really all we have, about the period of the people that we call the Vikings, although they didn't necessarily call themselves that. And this is a period of time in which I am very fascinated because it stands out for me as a people who were more powerful than the ground on which they stood, in a way. They were people who were obsessed with power and strength and the self-powering experience, as opposed to necessarily coming together with their divinities and whatnot. They fought with their gods. They had discussions about these kinds of things. So they were always pumping energy and pumping it and pumping it. And we know them for raids and all this manner of things, but they were fierce in other ways as well. And I go to that for a moment to answer this question in the circuitous route, and about that I would apologize if I knew any other way to do it. And I say that the energy that we have is so pure and constant that what we need to do in this modern world is not pull it in and suck it in and pack it around us so much, but we need to know where to put the gate and say, I have enough energy in my field just from walking through a store where 1,000 neon lights are happening and people are on their phones and there's stoplights and all this business, and sitting in a car that's got electricity running through it and having that pump into your close by intimate place. So in sorcery, what I find myself doing more often than not, and I do this every moment of my life. I mean, sorcery is what I do. So therefore, it doesn't make me better at it. It just makes me have more data. So what I find myself doing is regulating a slowdown based on what it is that I'm trying to do. If I'm trying to talk to the disincarnate or somebody who's newly disincarnate, if they want to talk to me, and I never, the rule is I never bring that to me. They have to come at their pace, the newly disincarnate. But just as an example, that is a very sort of tender energy. And it needs to be, I can't come at it with what my daughter calls full metal necromancer. I have to come back from that for a moment and say, okay, this is someone new to that. Or when I need to change somebody's point of view on something to make it a safer place, and that kind of thing happens occasionally. Those energies have to be pulled in, reined in, so that I can align with their energy, see where they are, and be the observer in my own experience. So the energy is flowing all the time, but the mastery, to me, is being able to regulate it and being able to say, I have to step back a little bit because my own energy is so intense in this moment that I want to say, I need less here, I need more here. The static practice is about standing on the line between those two extremes and saying there's a chaos void and there's a void on one side and all of this going on the other side, so let's pull from one and put into the other. So I don't think it's really necessarily about gaining energy, although it is occasionally. I think it's about saying no and learning how to regulate the energy. Anybody have any thoughts on that diatribe?
Well, I think one of the things that's coming up in the chat room now is, is it actually Silky had asked a question, would it be better to develop like a storage capacity to use the energy at will? Is that a goal really to work towards? And I think, Sorceress, you kind of touched upon it, but I'm curious to know your thought because, Morgan's talking about different energy levels for different tasks, regulation, but I think you're sort of, you've sort of touched on it, but I wanted to bring it up again anyway and see what everybody else thought.
Well, you can only store so much energy. And then the energy is moving you, you're not moving it. In sorcery, you have to be in control. You have to be in control of a couple of things, your thoughts, ideas, and intentions and desires, which in my theory, if one accepts the theory as a possibility, those things have physical weight. They are maybe not measurable yet by modern science, although I think they're getting there. I think they're catching up to the understanding of the importance of that. So you can only store so much. But the beauty of the thing about being in a physical environment that is packed with energy is you don't have to carry any bags. It's right there. You don't have to say, well, I've got it all in me and I want to carry more and more and more and be more and more powerful. To be more and more powerful in a situation, all you have to do is take a breath and allow it in. That'll put you in static practice, because what happens is you have this experience called your blood, and energy creates heat, and your body responds to that heat by creating more energy. And what happens is it goes round and round, and the cycle repeats itself, and the energy creates more heat, the blood reacts to more heat, and the blood is producing a higher frequency of energy, and you're right back in it. And you can go around and around in that thing without ever having to carry anything more than that which is just natural to your energy, to your person, the person who you are and the energy that you stand in. Awareness of the energy is different than carrying any extra energy. Does anybody else want to answer that question?
Well, before I got to know you better and I started to study some of the things that you are talking about with the static practice, if I became overwhelmed with what I had, I went back to the knowledge that I knew best. It's like, okay, what do you use? If you want to save something, where do you put it? Okay, it's energy. You want to put it in something that's insulated. Say I wanted it, I needed some kind of energy to put up some kind of, I wanted to use it to charge a tool that I had, to protect my front door, whatever. I would put it in a jar. It's like I would literally take what I had and force it into a jar by breathing into it. I mean, I know that sounds strange to most people, but
not to this crowd, it doesn't.
Nope.
No, not at all. I understand that completely, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
You get all that out, and then I would put a lid on it, and there's where I would keep it for further use. Pretty much the way you store blood. This is what you use for future use. As I did more of it, it's like, okay, I don't need a big jar. I could use just the blood, just concentrate everything into a couple drops of blood to release that. You cut the skin, you get all that out of you. Just like you've touched on many times, Sorceress, is, you cut yourself, you've got blood cells coming out, and you die a little bit. Well, you also release energy, too.
Yes.
So
yes, and if you think of energy as life, that makes perfect sense.
Right. So that's where I kind of made a connection there. So that's how I took care of things that if I was like, well, I'm a little overwhelmed here. That's how I would get rid of it.
Okay.
And for years, it worked. And then, like I said, I've found what you were talking about, and I started to read your stuff, and I read your books, and it's like, okay, this makes sense. This is what I've been believing, just you do it a different way, and it makes sense. The science is there, the experience is there.
I collected a lot of data on it and never got myself jammed up personally in any other belief. So therefore, the data that I have is pure and factual for me. What I discovered was there's an experience called sharing the information, and other people said, yeah, me too. So, the data that I had was a small group, and then the data became huge. And if you understand that energy is everywhere, there might not be any reason to carry it around in an extra capacity. Victor, what do you think about that?
I just want to say, Chris, the concept of breath as a transformer or a conveyor of energy is something that is found in so many different paths around the world and throughout history. There's a word for that in almost every language. So absolutely, that's something that's wonderful to use, to be able to use the breath as a director or transmitter of energy. The funny thing, when I was reading Blood Sorcery Bible Volume 2 over the weekend, you were talking about the concept of having a compass, and I just started getting into that chapter. And if this is something that you're going to talk about a little bit later, just stop me right now.
No, go ahead. I'll add to it. Go right in.
But really funny. What I found is if I'm working with energy for any purpose, and I feel a little overwhelmed, in addition to grounding, I change my polarity by changing my direction. And the really funny thing is, you were talking about going out, that the practitioner should go and get a compass, an actual physical compass. And believe it or not, before I read that chapter, I was going through a closet where I had a bag of stuff that I collected over the years. And I'd been to a conference about 2 years ago having nothing to do with any of this. And I pulled out a box that they had given out as a gift at that conference. And it turns out to be a compass mounted on a carabiner, of all things. So I have my compass now. And you talk about the synchronicity. You know, I find the compass, and there it is. She talks about the compass. So
yes,
just
there are no coincidences, and you know
no
that.
coincidence. Absolutely. But again, changing my direction, my physical direction, facing in a different direction, changing my polarity, I find also is a good way of diffusing some of the extra energy.
You know, this idea of polarity is very interesting to me because, like all people who, I guess you could use the word rejected, certain tenets of life, such as one should have a religion and this kind of thing. And I read everything I could probably before I was 20 about energy and directions, because the idea of being a human compass has always, I don't ever remember not being fascinated by that, about thinking of yourself as a center point in the compass and how you would turn and what that would mean and all that sort of thing. And I had compasses when I was a kid, and other kids wanted other stuff. I just wanted more compasses and more magnets. And we'll talk about magnets in a little bit because that's something I really want to address tonight. And what I discovered was that I knew nothing about it, and that I loved it and knew nothing about it. And that's always a wonderful place to be, because when you have an affinity for something and you don't know anything about it, you can be sort of in the pure moment of discovery. And I did things where I would replicate experiments, which I now understand to be rituals. And I would do these experiments facing 4 different directions or intenting in 4 different directions, or putting the materials in 4 different directions. And what I discovered was, although there was a lot of spirituality language about the directions, whether it was angels or it was, what's the other word, watchtowers and all this kind of thing, which I have no connection to. So I couldn't find anything that felt for me like it made sense. So as I do with all of my work, I took that as an opportunity to investigate it and just report what I saw. And what I discovered was, in this concept of directional sorcery, there were really 4 things that stood out. What stood out, 5 things in a way. What stood out was that everyone has a polarity for which they have an affinity. And, why that happens, I don't know. But everybody has, if you spin them around 100 times and put them in one place, they will many, many more times than not wind up choosing to face the polarity that they have an affinity for. Did this hundreds of times with as many people as who would let me do it. So that's where I came to understand the first of the 5 things. The other 4 things was that each of the polarities offered a particular specialty. And I discovered that when I faced things north, they increased. And that's a very brief comment on the whole thing. And, we'll get into it if you guys want to. When I faced things south, they decreased or pulled away. When I faced things to the east, they sped up. Whatever the process was, it just happened faster. And when I turned things to the west, there was sort of almost an organic sense of things pacing themselves. And 10,000 experiments later, that still holds true. So as we can get into a discussion a little bit tonight about directional sorcery, that has been my experience. So when we talk about rituals facing in those directions, we're just simply allowing ourselves to be part of that type of magnetism, that type of polarity that seems to prove itself over and over, at least having those attributes, and maybe more, which I haven't discovered, but I'm sure there's more to discover. Any thoughts on that? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Just a little aside, a few years ago, I made a joke, which actually stuck with me. But I said that men cannot take Viagra and iron tablets at the same time because they spin around and face north.
Now, Victor, you know that I must ask the following question. Have you experimented with that, and is there data?
I refuse to comment on the grounds that it might tend to incriminate me. So
fair enough. But you know, Victor, that people listening to this will experiment with that. So
I know they will.
Any data they want to send us, of course, will be confidential.
And they should just remember that anything lasting more than 4 hours, go see a doctor right away. Okay?
Bullshit. Go see his wife, not the doctor. What the hell's the matter with you? What's he going to do for you?
There you go.
There's me loving Chris just a little bit more than that. You know, we've all heard those commercials during family programming. I really enjoy them. They're wonderful. You know, the other night something was on, and I understand this is the first time there's been any television in my life in so many years. Like, I treat it. You know, we have it for 4 shows that we've all agreed to watch in this house because nobody has any interest in it. But we treat it like it's some brand new technology, like it's 1955 and no one has seen one before, because we never have one. And it's this new thing. We're very excited. And then we realized the other day that it's been off for like 6 days. But when it's on, somehow there's always a Viagra commercial on. And, you know, my daughter said to me, is this really all they talk about? Is there nothing else? You know, speaking of energy, I just want to mention this. When she was very young, I mean, my daughter has obviously had an opportunity to grow up in a very different experience than many children do. Certainly an experience I had grown up in. She would say things to me. Her energy was so pure, like right out on her sleeve. You could see where she was. She would say things like, if she was upset, she goes, could you just take these and calm me down? And she'd put her hands out. And when she did, I would touch her forearms, and it would be like, you know, like some sort of electrical charge, and it would work. So we have this connection of the transferring of energy like this. How that translates into her life as a teenager is very interesting. She can pick things up in a very pure way and cannot suffer fools, which has, I guess, its good points and its bad points. But the idea that a child trained in this kind of energy work I'm getting to see now where that goes and what it looks like. And I think it was Morgan or Silky who asked a question about carrying energy. And she has, at the ripe old age of 14, discovered that the carrying of energy is completely unnecessary. She just goes out and takes what she needs from what's around her and utilizes it. She carries nothing. She was talking to me the other day about tools and sorcery, and she does not have to do this work. She's exposed to it. She can do it if she wants. And we were talking about how she cannot grasp tools whatsoever. So she's sort of like the more digital version of me in that way. Like, I have a few tools. I have things that I use. She has none. She has no tools at all. And she just sort of reaches out and touches energy and gets things done. So I say that as we move forward in this modern world and around technology and energy in this way, people are showing up who can do this thing at the digital level, if you will, at the level of complete disconnect from boundaries or from, not really from boundaries, but from anchors. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, my whole thing, and I've said it since I figured out what it was that I did, you know, because when you first start doing this, it's like, what the hell am I doing? You know you're doing it, but you don't know what it's called. And I started to get around people that were quote-unquote witches, warlocks, and you start going to the stores, and you go to holistic fairs, and you go to all this stuff, and you just get to the point where it's like, I am not going to pay you $50 for a dull knife to cut whatever the hell you think it's going to cut, or spend $200 on some kind of chalice that I'm supposed to drink out of, or, you know, you buy this sword and you're supposed to stick this in this glass and it's going to make it a symbolic of the earth and the sky mating and all. What the hell are you talking about? If you got to go through all this shit You know, if you've got to go through all this nonsense just to do something, Christ, this is harder than changing my tire. You know, it's like, why the hell do I want to do this? It's like, look, you're basing all this, and it's supposed to be, well, this is an old religion, and this is what our ancestors did. Let me tell you something. If our ancestors had half the shit that we had nowadays, they wouldn't have done the things that they did back then. So you honestly think that they would rather have beeswax to hold something together or Gorilla Glue? You know, I mean, they would have killed for a bottle of crazy glue just to hold shit together when it broke. You know, why do you want to get stuck back in olden times? It's like, this is stupid. I mean, I can understand traditions, and, you know, all cultures have traditions, and that's honorable. That's fine. That's wonderful. But you can't live in the past. You can't deal with this stuff. And even our ancestors that, you know, okay, they had a cauldron. All right, fine. Well, they used it for every damn thing. Christ, they made dinner in it. They used it for storage. They took a bath in it. You know, it wasn't just something that you kept just for special occasions. Right, you know, right. If they had a special knife that they used to, I don't know, make it a phallic symbol or whatever the hell, they also used it to go out and skin deer with. You know, the idea of special tools for special things just didn't apply to people that didn't have anything. You know, everything was special. When you have nothing, you know, when you have nothing, the smallest thing is special to you. You know, you want to charge it with something? Charge it by using it. You know, well, I got to go get this wand and I'm going to hollow it out and put all kinds of shit in it and stick it in the ground so it's been out in the weather and gets all this energy. Hey, dumbass, it came out of a tree. How much more of a goddamn energy do you want in it? You know, the shit came out of the earth. How much more energy do you want in it? You can't get any more. What, you want it to come from the sky yet?
You know, Chris, if anybody gets anything out of this show tonight, I want them to get that it came out of the earth. How much more energy could you want in this and that? You know, you have the purest, clearest sense of this work. You know, and the first time we chatted, I was like, this guy, when he gets it all in his hands, get out of his way, because he's just going to be pushing down doors. Because you really have this unbelievable grasp of the true core of how it all works. You know, to your point, I talk about not having tools because everything is a tool. When we do a scrying class, I say, you know, you can scry on the glass of your TV. You can scry in the bottom of your cup. You can scry by looking into the water. You know, anything reflective, anything that gives you a flat surface, you can see what you need to see in it. I have this idea of myself, which is maybe not the idea of myself that other people have, and I am exhaustively transparent about my work and how I see it. I see myself living sort of alone. By alone, I mean just those people who want to be around me, in the middle of nowhere, and just you know, having my rocks and my bags of coal and my carbon and my zillion pounds of magnets, and just being in that space with those things, and that's more than enough. I mean, it's beyond enough. It's something I'm grateful to, you know, have access to. That's why the studio is the way it is. It's going to be very basic and allow people to work in it. But you're right, to this point of tools and you need this thing and you need that thing. You know, I'm not particularly, let's just say I speak my mind. And the other day we were walking around and we went into a place where a group of people were doing readings, and there were 3 people sitting around complaining about everything in their life. You know, talk about energy. You go into a place and people will say, oh, yeah, I can read your future. I can tell you everything that's going to happen. But, you know, I'm so miserable and this hurts and that's out of whack and this isn't. And I'm thinking, well, you know, talk about energy. Why would I trust these people to offer any kind of direction or clarity for me? So how we perceive energy and where it comes from is vital. It's life force in that sense. And as we walk through it and how we present ourselves in our own version of the work is so vital. I mean, Mary's going to have a little discussion right now about her divination work. When I met Mary, I met a divinator, and there are, I teach it, I do it myself, I'm very well known for it, but every now and then you meet somebody who has all the oars in the divination water, and Mary is one of those people. I can hear her blushing.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I know. So you are. Mary has an innate ability to understand the difference between divination and its power and its personal, how personal it is and how people's lives are transformed by it versus fortune telling. And I want to talk about a lot more things tonight. I want to give her a chance to discuss divination because Mary can reach divination in a very profound way. She sits with people and she shares with them stuff that many, many divinators will never get to. And I use that word divinators. I don't know if that's a word, but it's a word that I use. So I just want to take a moment to let Mary talk about divination, and then we can, jump back up back into things like magnets and whatnot. Mary, is this a good time for you to do that?
Yeah, I just wanted to, talk to folks that are listening to the show about what to expect really from someone who's good at divination, and I'll say that's me. I'm one of the people that are, and for the show purposes, if folks wanted to have questions looked at, really what I do is, we're talking about energy. This kind of all flows into our discussion about really just honing into that person's energy and looking at, it's kind of like, going through their file cabinet of their energy and seeing like what's in there and what's going on and getting that information together and presenting it to them. So because I have a clearer view, I don't have, all this jumble of their energy because, when someone comes to me, they sit down and a lot of times they're, not clear on what's coming up. They're not happy with what's going on in their lives. They're looking for answers. And I really look at it as an opportunity to help someone lay a blueprint. And the only way I can do that is really just to kind of get in there and look at their energy and say, okay, your energy is flowing in this direction right now. Or this is what's flowing back at you. We talk about an exchange of energy, what's coming out, what's going in, and looking at that and saying, okay, this is what is coming up. This is what you're pulling in. This is what is coming your way. And we need to look at the tools to make the changes for that. So it is definitely more in-depth than just, you're going to meet him in 3 months. Because it's more about, what is coming up for you? What is your energy projecting? Is this person that's coming into your life really the person that you want to come into your life? What about you? What about these things that you want to examine? So from that perspective, that's really the work that I go for with people. I think it's important to find someone who can really look at your energy and connect with you on that level in order to take you to the next steps. You're looking for more than a fortune teller. You're looking for more than just a straight, ask me your 3 questions and I'm going to look at them. So I think it's important for people to really talk with the person that they're going to get a reading with. So it's good that we're doing the show and folks can kind of get to know my energy and see if that's, what they want me to delve into, because some folks just want a simple answer. And, my readings, unfortunately, are not always so simple because we're going to look at things and we're going to get deep. And that's what's really about, divination for me. And that's what I'm hoping to bring to the show as folks bring up questions and bring up ideas that they want to take a look at. Not only would it be a reading, but it will also look at if there are things that they can do, from a sorcery perspective, and what they can do to make some changes, because now they can put some action to the thoughts. So it's kind of a twofold thing.
Well, Mary's going to be part of the my studio experience, and I asked her early on to come into that with me on some level. My readings tend to be, I come at them from a curative perspective because I am more interested in sorcery than divination, but I understand, and I even teach it this way, at the baseline level, that one must use divination before one uses sorcery, because people will come to you and tell you all manner of stories that are not true, or that are so created by their perspective based on maybe their own pain in the thing or their own participation, so that one has to say, well, let me use some divination, my own skill of that. And for me, I tend to ask the dead around them. My direction for divination is using what we call the nothing, which is just feeling what's going on and talking to the disincarnate. But I asked Mary to come in, and, I didn't even tell her I was going to talk about this tonight, because Mary can, she does this amazing thing where she's hearing somebody talk, and then she goes, yeah, but, and she tells them really what's happening. And she, as I say, I walk through every moment of my life in sorcery. Mary has got an unbelievable skill set in divination and is walking through every minute of her life, seeing facts and seeing truths and helping people sometimes against their will. And I don't mean that in a forceful way, but it just comes out and it's pretty fantastic. So one of the things that I feel is great about Mary as a divinator is she can say, this is where you are in the energy, which I have to tell you, Mary, the first time I heard you say that, I felt like, oh, there is somebody else out there who sees it that way, who understands what divination is. So, Mary will be able to offer some of that in the studio, and I am grateful to have come across you and your energy, because it's right spot on. It's just right spot on. So, how do people send questions to you for the purpose of your next week on the show? Say you'll take 10 or 15 minutes, maybe at the top of the second hour, and we'll figure out how that goes. And you'll talk about some questions. How do they do that?
Yep, they can email me at my email address, which is theshotgunmary@gmail.com, or on our fan page, which is Dark Matters Radio Show with Sorceress Cagliastro on Facebook. And folks can email privately through there. They don't have to post it on the wall. And they can be anonymous too, but if they just want to send in questions, and then we can just, do a reading based off of that. So folks that are listening, it'll be recorded, and then they can just listen back and see what comes up for them, which is kind of nice, because when it's nice and cold, I like to call it nice and cold, I don't get any extra information. I just get the question. I can just flow with it, and connect into that question and the energy and just run with it. And I also do talk with the disincarnate too, because I think they have such great information, and I, love talking with them, because some of them have some very interesting personalities. But they have a great perspective too. So I kind of pull in just, whoever wants to knock on the door gets to come in and work with them. So I think it'll be great for folks to actually see it in action. So absolutely they should send us their questions.
Mary, one of the things I'd like to do is at some point have a camera in the studio that shows us doing this show. And every now and then maybe we'll either get together or we'll do it from different points of views, or just one of us, I don't know. Just a little bit of a visual so people can see what happens when we talk together and the energy that we share. And, that'll happen for classes and whatnot. There's a huge class schedule that's now available on my site. But I would like people to be able to see what it is that we do. All of us have come across people who are really full of crap and who want to say, oh, I can read you, or I could do divination for you, and, I'm going to put in my bizarre-looking contacts and walk around you and, shake a rattle. And we've all been in that. We've all seen people do this kind of stuff, and I know everybody knows what I'm talking about. But anyway,
does anybody have an Uncle Bob?
Yes. Has anyone ever been around anyone who passed away whose name starts with M? Yeah.
I have a tall man standing behind you. Do you have a tall man in spirit?
A tall man. A man who's taller than you.
Right.
Those kinds of things. And you have to be careful, because the point of sort of mocking that is that divination is a very private thing. And I've done things where I've been in rooms and I've talked in a room full of people. I even have some footage of that, and talking to their disincarnate around them, and in a very sort of gentle and yet straightforward kind of way. And if I can't exactly see that person and tell you what they look like and who I think they are, and give you language from them that would make you sure that that's them, then something has gone wrong. If a person is saying that they're talking to your disincarnate, or they're saying that they're seeing things around you, make them prove it. The difference between the work that I'm doing and people who just write about stuff is that I am dead set on proving what it is that I do. When clients come to me and they want things done and they want proof, and I say, well, just do what I tell you to do, or stay out of the way, and you'll get your proof, you get your results. I'm not interested in writing books I can't back up. I'm not interested in clients coming to me and saying, I heard you can do this thing, and 10,000 people couldn't. And I just want to sit with you and get the work done. We talked one night about people who have to film everything that they do and make a huge show out of everything, and how sometimes when I do things like exorcisms, and that can mean a lot of things. That's not necessarily what anyone thinks. That it can be quite boring, but it's effective, and the person walks away unpossessed. So, energy work is a very wide spectrum of things, and you have to approach it with a respect for the energy. The energy that comes from your body, the energy that comes from the interaction with the disincarnate or demons or whatever. You have to understand that it's all living here at the same time. And that's why I can walk through my life and do sorcery in every minute of the day, because I have a respect for the energy, and I consider myself part of it, not a perpetrator, not something coming in to pick and choose from it. Victor, I'm curious as to how you feel about those kinds of interactions with energy.
I agree. For me, it's very subtle, not dramatic at all, and interesting that you had mentioned about filming and so on and so forth. A couple of television shows had contacted one or more of the teams that I've been on, asking for recreations in one case, or just filming of the work that we do. And we went to this one house in New Jersey, and it was the cleanest energy I've ever experienced. But the producer said, that's not good. We need ghosts. I said, I'm sorry, there's clean energy here. And so what they did was they brought a guy in who was some alleged medium, and had him do a thing, and he found stuff there, and he found all kinds of stuff that actually doesn't exist, and dramatized it for the purpose of the show. And the bottom line is, if you see something on television, if you don't have the things that either titillate or scare people, no one's going to watch. And if they don't watch, they can't sell advertising. So when you see it in the public media, just let the buyer beware. That's the first thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said so true. Go ahead. Sorry.
And for me, a lot of the work is subtle. Now, I just want to go back to talking about what my experience has been with the disincarnate. Often, I will start feeling emotional feelings or physical sensations. And one of the things that when I first started on this path, I swore I never would do was what I call physical mediumship. But the disincarnate have chosen me to do this work from time to time. And when I say this, I'm talking about whatever feelings they took with them, and maybe Chris can identify with this, but whatever heaviness they took with them, I sometimes will feel while I'm working with them. And eventually I will, like I said, channel, transmute, and ground the energy. But I've had a number of occasions where people have snapped pictures of me while I was doing this work, and the pictures are perfectly clear except around the area of my face and shoulders, and it's a total distortion. It's not me. It's obviously not me in the physical sense anyway. And so I've had that experience where the energy has manifested physically for me, either by causing some type of transmutation in the photograph or in feeling it. And when I say feeling it, I'm talking about really, really deep emotion. I had a experience with a disincarnate spirit once where this gentleman had tremendous remorse over things that he had done in his life, and I started crying almost inconsolably for about 20 minutes, and then eventually I was able to ground that energy. But again, a lot of this stuff, most of the stuff for me is very subtle.
Well, Victor, your purity, and you have such a pure energy when it comes to, such a dignified energy when it comes to the work. None of that surprises me, because I would imagine, and this is what came up for me when you talked about that, was that much of that is what protects you. That there's a sense of very genuine and caring energy around you that helps you not take in the stuff that you don't want, helps you not be injured by the experience because of your compassion. And compassion is a powerful thing. It can it can make you feel too taken into the energy. It can make you want to go inside of a person and rescue them on some level. So I have a feeling that energy that you see in the photographs is protecting you. Do you think that that's possible?
Yeah, that readily makes sense. It resonates when you say it that way. And yes, the funny thing about me is that from life experience, and we bring into any of the work we do our life experience, knowing what it is to hurt and have pain and to feel that pain, it can either do one of two things to you. It can harden you, or it can open up your heart and make you more compassionate. And I think that's what I bring to what I do. I bring that experience of pain, knowing what it's like to experience that pain, and opening up to helping others process that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly what I get from you. I want to talk now, because we're sort of in that place. That's something I've been doing some research on, which is the electromagnetic energy around the human heart. And I thought about the iconic image of the heart on everything. I heart this, I heart that, and how we are sort of drawn to that image. And I thought about energy and that image, and magnetics and that image. And it turns out that if you look at, from a pure point of physics, from the pure perspective of the understanding of Maxwell's work, that every magnetic field has an electromagnetic field that is comparable to it, and how electronics and the flow of energy flows into magnetism and all that stuff. And you can go look all that up if you're interested in that. But through Maxwell's work and Faraday's work and all those people who spent hours and hours, and which turned into days and months and decades of their life over one process till they figured it out, and how grateful I am for those people who have done that. Through that, machines and, I guess EEGs and all these kinds of things that can pick up energy and measure it, and the squid measurement system have been able to look at various organs in the human body. And this goes to storing energy and grasping energy and utilizing energy. And I talked about this in class the other night, about the electromagnetic field of various organs. And what I started to think about was the brain and the heart, because we carry these two massive amounts of cells, if you will, with us everywhere we go. And it's pretty common that each one of us has some kind of brain and some kind of heart, talking specifically about the organ. And it turns out that if you compare the two, that the human heart has 60 times the amount of electromagnetic energy coming out of it, measurable energy, than the human brain, and 5,000 times more pure magnetic energy, measurable energy. And I was thinking about the fact that I had a relative who had a heart transplant, who has, since become a member of the disincarnate, but lived 17 years with the heart, and how I had to do a lot of research to help that end of the family understand what was happening, and how before he had a heart transplant, he had a pacemaker, and how he always said he was more afraid of the pacemaker than the transplant, because it was some electric device and it may or may not fail. So what I discovered was when someone has a heart transplant, it's a pretty basic piece of surgery in terms of the mechanics of the thing. It has a number of vessels. They're large. They're taken out. Another one is put in, and the vessels are reconnected. And during that time, blood flows through the body by machines and whatnot. But not to spend too much time on this, but to get to the energy portion of this thing, the thing that cannot be reconnected is the natural electromagnetic pulsing of the human heart. It has to be paddled back into, they take the paddles and put it right on the heart in some way and jumpstart the heart, and then the heart gets into it, and the muscle has muscle memory, and it keeps doing it. But the electrical current is never reconnected. And it turns out that various kinds of high-tech machinery that can measure electromagnetic energy can find the electromagnetic energy from the heart on any portion of the skin of a human being. Now, this is not the same as the electromagnetic energy of any other organ, It can be actually measured anywhere on the human body. And in some cases can be measured as far away as 2.5 to 3 feet. The electromagnetic energy specifically coming from the human heart. So this organ that sits right in the center of our physicality, if you will, is working as some sort of battery far and above the battery we understand it to be as pumping our blood. It is connecting us in some way to the electromagnetic fields around us in a powerful and profound way. So this kind of thing, when you know it, once you know it, you can't unring the bell, and you know it, and that's that. This kind of powerful recycling of energy through our heart, through the chest of our being, through standing there and having this come through right through the center of us, makes us in a state of proof of being part of the electromagnetic field. And yet, more human beings suffer from heart disease than any other kind of illness, basically speaking, on the planet. So the regulation of energy and learning how to control it, which I call sorcery, some people call evil, and some people call manipulation, and some people call against religion, and some people call ego, is vital. And if we could learn and share with one another how to do it, think about the possibility for strength in the human condition. Anybody want to pick up any of that and have a thought on it? Is this affecting anyone? Is there thoughts about it? Is there anything in the chat room about it as I'm talking about it? Hello? This is that dead space that we talked about, where I say something that no one's heard about before, and everybody goes quiet, and I love that, because I know that means everyone's thinking. Go ahead, Victor.
Just so profound, and I wonder if the connection of the fact that the heart is the conveyor of the blood and the iron and the charging and recharging of the iron through that part, is that the reason why the magnetic field is so strong?
It might be the reason why. It might also be the result of.
Okay.
Because what we don't have is a moment where that's not happening in a living being, so we can't measure. But what I can say about that is it is obvious that the heart reacts to stress, it reacts to emotion, it reacts to sadness, it reacts to joy, because there are changes in those kinds of, in the quantity of the electromagnetic field, the thickness of it, its ability to show, just to be seen from a distance, when one is in either chaos or a powerful emotion. So in that sense, there has to be a connection to what we're doing and this electromagnetic field. I mean, that's what it is. And that's, the more we read about this, the more I see experiments in this. You know, I tell students, carry magnets. Carry magnets, carry magnets, carry magnets. And when you're done carrying magnets, carry some magnets. And, you know, I've tried everything. I've had them embedded in my skin. I've tried wearing them on gloves, which now I'm going to make available, because people say, hey, where did you get those gloves with the magnets in them? And, you know, even like a piece of fabric with a magnet in it that people wear on their fingers. All these things, you know, I'm going to work towards making them available, because we are so much a part of the magnetic equation of this earth, we don't even realize. We don't even realize that we are completely able to control what's happening to us by just essentially touching our chest and putting ourselves right in the circle of energy. Any thoughts on that, Mary, Chris, chat room?
Well, the heart... Oh, go ahead.
Chris, it's all yours. It's all yours, my friend.
Well, the way I was seeing it, the heart has to be the center of all the energy, because, number one, from what I've learned as a mechanic, is when you have any kind of friction, you create energy. So it makes sense with all that pumping and going on that there would be friction that would cause energy. Now, you have the part that goes away and you have the part that comes to, which in my mind would think that one is polarized in one direction, one is polarized in the next direction. So the heart would be the neutral ground, more or less, where everything runs into. circuit breaker, if you will, in the flow of all the energy. Because we all know if you pop that circuit breaker, you're screwed. And just like a circuit breaker, you can get it reconnected. I mean, that would make sense with the whole when you get a heart transplant. Okay, you flip the switch, it starts back up again, you get your connection back in shape, and everything runs. I mean, that's real basic, but...
That's pretty much what happens.
Right. And that would just make sense that the heart would be the spot where everything is concentrated. Now, the thing is, how do you get that to project out into doing what you're doing? Do you get it and, you send it through the hole in the front of your head, or you send it out your hands, or you blow it out your asshole? Whatever you got to do.
I wouldn't pick that one, Chris. I wouldn't pick that one. But okay, go ahead.
Well, think about pointing that at somebody sometime, and what if that one? Just run that picture through. Put that picture on MySpace and see what that, or on Facebook and see what that does.
That's, I think, a different intention. Earlier tonight somebody asked us a question about carrying energy, which is why I brought forward this conversation about all this energy that's already in the heart. And sorcery is about, for me, I mean, look at the title of the Second Blood Sorcery Bible. It's striking the target, the static practice and the practitioner. What we want to do is say, well, I'm sitting here in my home in the East Coast of America, and I want to affect somebody, in Seattle or in Scotland or, in Japan. How do I do that? And obviously, what we probably should not do is try to expand the energy coming out of the heart muscle for its 7,500 miles, because that would attach us or overlay us into such a mass quantity of energy. It's probably not something our physical vessel can grasp or handle. So what we do is we connect from this physical vessel, this energy, to whatever is the next one and the next one and the next one. And the energy starts to flow from myself to someone in Japan because I understand where the target is. That's how sorcery works. That is the baseline of what sorcery is. The question is, how do you send that from you to that person? Well, you understand that in this thing called blood sorcery, we all share all the same elements. So all I need to know is, and this is a big one that people don't tell you, is not how to get the energy from point A to point B, but how to stop it at point B. Because this is the profound truth in the work that I do, is what I teach people how to do is not just find the target, but put out the kind of energy where the target will stop it and grasp it. And that's what makes this kind of work different than from what else is out there. Chris, were you saying something? Or?
Yeah, when I was in the Marines, I was a radio operator. And what we learned about the different kinds of radio frequencies, you have FM and AM. How FM works, FM uses a ground wave, which basically goes from one radio and you send it across ground, just like it says. It sticks to the surface of the earth, and that's how it gets from point A to point B, which kind of makes it ineffective to some for long distance, because any obstacles can block the radio wave. Where AM, amplitude modulation, uses a sky wave, where it projects itself into the stratosphere or the ionosphere and then bounces down onto where you're transmitting it. That creates what's called the dead spot. That's why certain places where you go, you can't pick up certain radio stations, but you're in the middle of California and all of a sudden you got Radio Free Europe on your radio.
Right, that makes sense.
That's where it comes back down. Now, what I think of doing when I do the work that I do, I try to visualize things when I'm doing an event. And I try to use what I know as far as sending my energy. Now, if I'm saying we're all transmitters, so which means we're also receivers. We're transmitter receivers, just like a radio. And you just have to figure out what the frequency is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of, okay, you're here, and you're not that far from me, maybe 10 miles, okay. If I can transmit along the ground, I can get to you. If you're further, then I have to figure out a way to get around obstacles to do what I've got to do to get to you, which was where the AM type radio transmission would come.
Chris, do you think that there's a difference between 10 miles and 10,000 miles? I'm curious as to what you think, because I haven't thought of that. What a shock.
For energy reasons, I don't think so, because your radio doesn't put out any more power to transmit from here to across the street than what it does to 10 miles down the road.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the same amount. It still sends out the same. It's all in the way that you transmit it. It's all in the way that it travels in order for it to get to where it's supposed to go.
Well,
so
Go ahead.
I don't know if we necessarily use more energy, or we get ourselves thinking that we do, or that we have to.
Well, I don't have clients. When clients come to me, they're not sitting on my lap, so we don't have a physical connection. And I say to them that, whether we're on Skype or we're talking on the phone or we're emailing, there's no difference in communication. If I've connected to someone, I have. It's not more energy. There's only more energy when I have to construct something that is complex, and it must get through energy. If somebody is dealing with an illness, for example, that has taken over their lives, the illness in and of itself has its own potential energy, and I have to get through that and perhaps even combat it in some way. But, it's the same like with divination. People say, how could you do it on the phone? And Mary said, a cold reading, because a cold reading is the best kind of reading. The less I know about you, the better it is. But sorcery is the same way. I do some very complex sorcery for all kinds of people, which is why, we're going to develop the firm now to take that to another level. But a client comes to me, whether they call me or they meet with me in person, they're not sitting on my lap. I don't hug them and touch them. I don't touch any of them. I have a thing about it. I'm not interested in a physical contact with the energy, because that, to me, creates either a dependency or a confusion or a weirdness that I don't want to be part of. So if you're not sitting on my lap, you might as well be in Japan. It doesn't make a difference. Because in my theory, which is how I started the Second Blood Sorcery Bible, is that it all comes from this theory about thoughts, ideas, and intentions having a physical weight. So that physical weight becomes part of the process, and that can transmit from me from here to Japan in the same way that it can translate across the table when a client is with me. We did a thing the other day. I was out with my daughter and Pamela, who is working with me here, and we needed somebody to do something a different way, a complete stranger in a retail situation, because there are things that my daughter doesn't like the texture of and she doesn't want to hold, and she's always had a sensitivity to those things. And I said, I just changed his energy to get him to do it exactly what we needed to do, which would not have cost him anything or would not have changed anything except that he had an idea about how things should be done. So in that moment, I bent his energy to give it to us the way we needed it given to us. I could have done that if he was in front of me or if he was, across on the other side of the planet. It wouldn't have made a difference. I didn't expend any more energy on him because he was across a glass counter as I would have expended if he was 4,000 miles away. So I think that if we can step a little bit away from the idea of blockages at all and understand that the fact that everybody I'm dealing with has blood and iron and is connected to the same magnet, we barely even got into magnetism tonight. We could do another 4 hours on this. Then there is the difference between me as a Sorceress Cagliastro and somebody who else is just learning is that I now know how to do it. And I when I teach it, what I say is, remember, there's no difference in anything that's in your way except the client's intention and willingness to give you all the detail. Victor, what do you think about that?
I tend to agree. I don't think I think time and space are concepts that interfere with any of the work that we do. And I think that I'm just curious. If we can get back to the heart for a minute, I have actually two questions for you. Number one, when someone has a heart transplant, does the energy of the transplanted heart from the disincarnate person carry over with it?
That is a really great question, and I'm glad you asked it. I have, in my life, I've had some truly interesting experiences, and I say that because I've been in service to the disincarnate on the ground almost my entire life. I've been a trade embalmer, I've been a reconstructionist, I've done the thing where you get skulls and you put faces back on them. I've worked for the chief medical examiner's office, I've handled autopsy material, and I've been a necromancer. So when I tell you I'm bringing the juice to the table, I'm bringing the juice to the table. In that experience, I have had such unique opportunities to see what happens to organ transplant individuals at both ends of the spectrum. When the relative of mine was having the heart transplant, I met a lot of transplant victims. How amazing is that to be able to say? And I use the term transplant victims because they consider themselves victims of their bad heart, many of them. So not to get too overly involved in the language, you can't say to a person who has somebody else's heart, hey, are you feeling, like that person's in your body? You don't want to do that. It's just not compassionate, and it's not a good thing to do. But you can find other ways to do that. And I would ask questions. I would say, do you feel like you've had maybe some unique opportunities or some new thoughts since you've had this new battery, this new energy in your body that's oxygenating your blood appropriately and all this kind of thing? And always what leaked out was something, some oddity to that individual, something that to them was brand new, suddenly wanting different foods that they never wanted before, suddenly experiencing an interest in an art form or something that they never experienced before. And in those moments, I would often have the opportunity to also talk to the disincarnate, which I did not reveal to the individual who had the new heart in their body. And they would say, yeah, that was my thing. I was into that. I had that experience. So the data proves that, yes, there is, in fact, a crossover between what that heart has experienced and what it brings to its new vessel. And I can tell you that from having the experience of seeing both sides. In the medical examiner's office, I would often see the body would come in from somebody who donated their organs. Now, those organs were not harvested at the medical examiner's office. They had to be harvested at the time of death, except for corneas, which were occasionally harvested on bodies in the morgue. And some of those people, those disincarnate, would say things to me like, yeah, I gave up my body. I gave away a piece of my body. Some of them would say they wish they had not. So some of those were very sad and difficult situations to deal with. But all of those things did happen. I guess that answers your question.
And my other question, if I can be indulged, and if this sounds sounds a little bit sappy or a little philosophical, it's my nature.
And that's what we love about you.
You talked about the weight of thoughts. You talked about the weight of energy, the weight of the particles that we work with. Is there a weight to love?
There's a weight to commitment in the moment. And whether that's love or anger or inquisitiveness, whatever it is, there's a weight to being committed in the moment. So the answer to that, in my experience, is yes. because any time that somebody is completely invested in the moment, there's a weight to that feeling. You know how sometimes you're standing next to someone and you don't even know they're next to you, and then all of a sudden you feel their energy? Or someone is about to touch you and you feel it before it happens, or you want so badly for someone to touch you that you can make a connection and almost move them towards you. That's two kinds of energies happening at the same time. It's the weight of a thought, intention, and idea, of course, and it's also this kind of physiological energy that we have, such as what we talked about in the electromagnetic field of the human heart, pulling towards or desiring that pull so deeply that you can make that energy move towards you. So, yes, of course there's a physical way to love. There's a physical way to all kinds of connections and commitments into the moment. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're certainly welcome. Thank you for asking the question. Mary, other questions that anybody has? I mean, we're getting to that place now where it's 20 of, and I want to try and get people's questions answered.
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions. Silky had asked about true north versus magnetic north.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference? How do you hone to that?
Yeah. Well, true north and magnetic north are matters of science in a profound way. And the idea of north, especially if, north is the direction that I feel the most profoundly drawn to. And I will tell you that for me, magnetic north is the way that works better for me. And because we are huge packages of energy, and especially now that we've talked about the human heart and all this kind of thing, I would say that to try both of those and to see which one fits you in a better way, which one of those things provides what feels like a solution in the moment, and to go with that. And you'll find that it becomes consistent. It doesn't feel, it's not one then the other. You tend to find one, and it becomes consistent. Victor had said that here he is reading the Blood Sorcery Bible, the second one, and he finds a compass in his closet. That's probably been there all along. The point to that, and I love that you told that story tonight, Victor, thank you for that, is that the polarities become true for you in the moment that they become true. And yes, north needs to be north, and south does need to be south, because this is an issue of energy and the physical aspects of energy. But just experiment a little bit. Allow yourself to feel both of those kinds of north and see which one settles in. Because the truth of you honing to it is you're not trying to shoehorn yourself into it. You want to find where your energy fits naturally into it and use that. Because the most important thing about energy is feeling comfortable in it. It's feeling aligned with it. If we spend too much time trying to align, then it's not the right energy for us. Any other questions?
Yeah, we also had from Morgan, which I thought was a very interesting question too. Do you think that moving of magnetic poles on a yearly basis may account for the rising cases of heart disease among people? Will we be more susceptible to vascular and heart problems as the Earth's poles get closer to flipping?
Morgan, I love you. I'm very, very interested in the flipping polarities and how that's going to happen, and whether or not there will be one in 1,200 years or less than that, and whether or not technology is forcing us faster into the flip of polarities. I think that this concept of energy works best against resistance can be our friend or our enemy. And if we remember that energy works best against resistance, then we can get on the side of the energy where the resistance works for us as opposed to against us. When the polarities flip, there will be an enormous sense of panic, and by panic I mean chaos in our energy. If one walks into the chaos and becomes part of it, if one enjoins with the energy of change, And I don't mean that on the level of, moving your house or change something in your life. I mean the energy of the physical change of polarity. Then I think that we will be fine. The resistance is the problem. The fact that we spend so much time resisting it and feeling up against it and feeling oppressed by it. This is the problem with the energy of the flip. People need to become knowledgeable about the flip. It's the physical version of the Y2K thing. Y2K came and went and nothing ever happened. And everybody figured it out, and we all remembered to put the big 2 instead of the 1, and all the computers that didn't have the 2 in it, somebody fixed it or didn't, or you moved on to another object, and nothing happened, and, computers didn't shut down, and oxygen tanks didn't disappear, and all kinds of things that were supposed to happen didn't happen. But the stress of dealing with Y2K was much more horrific than the event could ever have been. And I think that the flipping of the polarities will be exactly the same thing. If people just turn with it, they'll be fine. If they fight against it, they will not be. I really think that's what's going to happen.
Mm.
Is there any scientific evidence? I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
I'm just curious if there's any scientific evidence, if any of the archaeologists have studied what happened with the animal population the last time a flip took place, because so many animals use the polar directions to migrate and to navigate.
There's absolutely no evidence at the archaeological level that flip affected animals in any way. It affected more their tendencies a little bit. They saw changes in hunting patterns because they went with it. They felt the change in polarity and they went with it. So what it did was it changed their migration, hunting based on migration, that kind of thing.
Right.
It changed a lot of that because they said, oh, okay, everything's over there now, and they went with it. If you take, for example, the Arctic fox, which is thought to have one of the highest frequencies of understanding of energy and polarity, and you watch the Arctic fox, it will migrate 5 degrees towards whatever direction the change is every year. It will migrate its hunting habits in that direction. It's not panicking. It's not does not seem disoriented in any way. It's doing what it needs to do in terms of bending itself towards the polarity. Mm. So in the archaeological record, the startling thing was that there was no great change, is that the animals just said, oh, okay, everything's over there now, so let's go that way. And, of course, as evolution becomes part of that process, and we see that there are some animals that might not have been able to function with the migration that went maybe to a colder place or a hotter place than they were used to, then they were affected by evolution and were removed from the chain. But the animals did just fine.
Thank you.
I think
You're welcome.
Part of the problem is, too, that you have the one scientists that are saying this is a gradual change, blah, 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 and, this is going to affect over so much time. And then you have the people on the other end going, oh, my God, it's going to happen overnight. And that's what everybody thinks about.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about that this has happened before. And
many times.
It has adjusted. Everybody's got this idea that, Earth is going to be just fine. It's just whether we're fucked or not. You know
what George Carlin says? He says that the Earth is going to take us off our back like fleas off a dog when she's done with us, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I wouldn't use the word she, he did, but that's exactly what's going to happen. We're running short on time now, and I just want to say that, first of all, I hope, Victor, that you'll join us again and be part of the process whenever it's convenient for you, as many times as you like. We'd love to have you. The point of view is wonderful and a really good addition to this group. So please come and be part of this with us. That everyone join that.
Thank you thank all of you for the privilege and for welcoming me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it would be great. We'd love to have you on board. Your energy is wonderful and so much appreciated in this group. I just want to mention a couple of things before Mary takes us out. And this is, in a sense, a vulgar statement of promotion of the work, and I'm not going to apologize for that, because my point of view on the work is if I don't share it, then what the hell is the point? The studio is coming to a place where it's getting ready to be available to people who want to do things in it. I'm thinking on or about the end of the first or second week in June, it's going to be a little bit more available. And in that place, we're going to do things like the Blood Project and all kinds of experiments where we get to show sorcery to each other. And, we'll have clients in there, and we'll have all kinds of things. And one of the things that we're doing is something called the Firm, which you should...
Oh.
I think we might have lost her. Sorceress will be back. I know she wants to talk about the Firm and then the studio in New Bedford, and there's a lot of great things coming up for the work. So I think she's going to she'll join us, in a moment and talk about it. But Chris and Victor, I don't know if you guys had anything. Wait, she's back. Okay, let me bring her on.
Yep.
Okay. And we fill the time, Sorceress. Go
on?
for it.
Okay, I just want to briefly finish this. And we're going to do the Firm, which is going to be sort of a larger scale group, something no one's ever done before, as far as I know, which is having 5 or 6 people on a team together doing sorcery and divination for one particular purpose. So all those things are going to be happening, and I've put up the new class schedule on the website at CagliastroTheIronRing.com, and I know Mary's going to take us out with all that, but there's so much going on. This process is growing, and I'm going to do a bunch of shorter books on various things that I teach classes on. We've got the Flatline Ritual coming up, which is a way to affect dream state. And I just want people to tell me what aspects of this they want to hear about, because I talk about it all day. It's what I do. And know that the work is coming together in a place where people will be able to reach out and touch it in a very profound way. And that anyone who's interested in doing that should contact me or contact me through Mary or whoever, whichever one of us you want to get in it with, and come be part of it and look at what's happening, because the work, this is the work of the future of the work. And I've said that before, and I'll say it again, because we've gotten to the digital place now, and what's next is to be able to bend this energy and use it with one another, for one another, on one another, however that works out, and understand that we are part of this greater magnetic energy and take our place in the potential of this thing, and always in service of the disincarnate and their participation and their part in the thing. So I just wanted to mention that that's happening, and go ahead. Thank you, Chris, tonight. Wonderful as always. Thank you for being my co-host on this thing. Victor, thank you. And Mary, of course. And Mary, more divination in the future. You want to take us out?
I sure will. Thanks for joining us for this week's edition of the Dark Matters radio show with the Sorceress Cagliastro. To reach the Sorceress, you can find her at CagliastroTheIronRing.com. Chris Rogue Ostrowski can be reached via his email at hellsrogue, HELSROGUE @gmail.com. I can be reached, Shotgun Mary, at theshotgunmary@gmail.com. And you can find Victor Furman at his fan page on Facebook, Victor the Voice Furman. Please follow us on Facebook at the Dark Matters Radio Show with the Sorceress Cagliastro page. And join us again next week when our topic will be serving the disincarnate. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Mary. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.